Okay, I think we're ready. Alright. Good morning. I think we're online. We have good news, we have Nita here, so that's the key thing. Presentation today is on botany, and then for first come, first served basis, up to 10. After quick ones, I think you're talking about making a tour.
Right, we have space for 10 today because I'm the sole person with that facility here. So, and I just want to remind, I need to put the conservation program up first.
Okay.
If that's okay. Right. But I'm really excited that some of you are interested in going over.
Where did you sign up for the 10, or we would have done on Slack or email?
That was kind of it was noted in the email, and then we'll just get a page out here in the first 10 that want to go. Put it on there. How many want to go? It starts about 1:30. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Looks like we've got our 10.
Sure, and if it's like 11 or 12, it doesn't matter. We can squeeze it in. But
Just
will be a delight.
quick announcements. I have a list online, and I bet Stephanie does too, of all the hours we've done so far this year total, and all the hours that you've been here, the attendance. I also have a list of all of the hours that that you have reported in VMS. Like at some point during the break, come by and we'll look at that to be sure that you're in agreement with that. We have just a few folks that I'm concerned about that don't have all their hours. And it's kind of like in this world, if you don't file a tax return, you haven't paid your taxes. Here, if you don't put it in VMS, it didn't happen. At least for graduation. Just want to be sure that it's credit for the thing done. So the good news is a lot of you guys are up to date. All after today and probably next week, you're ready for graduation. So we have, yes, ma'am.
Is there any progress on the water conservation? Like reason for that?
On the water specialist?
Yeah. Program.
I don't know.
She said to hold off.
I would go ahead and report the hours. I'm a bigger fan of reporting the hours and then figuring it out, just to be sure you've recorded them that are in
She
there.
said we couldn't go.
Once
For the
approved, you
advanced
can't.
training.
Okay. Then look at what we've got here today and then answer that question. And a lot of you are at 33 plus hours already in VMS. And with today, with a 4-hour year, by next session, you'll be done. So you'll think your level of confidence will go with that, where you are. We have a May chapter meeting coming up. Much for that. I think they've got a lot of the things reloaded on the website. I don't know if they're finished yet, but they lost a lot of their calendar items when they changed some website issues. If you're going to the chapters. Quick introduction. Nita's already started. Nita Tiller is here at the Mercer Center. As I walked in this morning and the music was playing, it's like an oasis in the middle of all of this craziness. So, and we've got Anita for 4 hours today. I think we've got some actual lab kind of work we're going to do.
You're going to be cutting up things. Yeah. So, and we'll take you out for a quick walk in the garden so you're not sitting here 4 hours. I'm excited.
So I'll let Anita introduce herself because I'll run the machine over there for a bit. But,
yeah, Al will follow me.
Yeah, actually the room's going to follow you.
And
Al in the room did not agree.
Okay, okay, great. Anyhow, I've been here, since 2000. So I've seen a lot of changes here. And, it's a pleasure to work with you guys. I've been with, Heartwood since its foundation. I was one of the founding members. And, with, teaching the master gardeners and other master naturalist chapters, pretty well as soon as so it's always a delight to see you guys, and some of you always become volunteers, which is fantastic, because as a county park, we are and a botanic garden, I have to remind everybody, we're understaffed. The volunteer force here has been incredible in assisting us through the many years. As you probably heard, we've had a few floods here, and my volunteers were the first ones to show up and help clean up the building. We had 8 inches of water, which isn't much considering what happened. But we're excited, and I forgot to bring my business cards, but I think my email address is on there. If you have any questions, if you want any additional materials, I didn't print out all the materials today. And forgive me, some of the my older botanical slide, just noticed this morning didn't print in. You see a weird gap in there. And ask questions during your break. You can walk around and look at the play, and it can help you sort of connect to botany. Which is a national organization of about 81 botanic facilities since 1989. And that started when we became more involved with endangered native plants here in the Houston area, specifically a number of the prairie species. Talk a little about that. Engineers did the surveys for a new road that was being put in behind Willowbrook Mall to connect with Hutton Road. So this little preserve is West Greens Road. It's not open to the public, but it is open to tours for a limited number of species. So we were delighted a few years ago to lead. Were any of you on that tour? The preserve through the Master Naturalist meeting a couple of years ago. And then, but it was a lot of fun. We took a bus, we toured the preserve first, then we toured the garden, and then we toured the campus. And there's also a video of that we created before we led the live tour, because COVID, Master Naturalist State meeting was made online, so we have a virtual tour for you to look at if you're interested also. And I'm pretty sure it's an hour long, so you get training. So, any of these things that you have a question about, whether it's valid training, if it involves me, if you have a problem, let me know. And today, the tour of the building featured we made And we partner with all Texas partners. San Antonio Botanic Garden was the first TPC institution, and then Lady Hill Johnson Wildflower Center came along to join. And then lastly, the Botanical Research Institute of Texas, which is now Fort Worth Botanical Gardens. So we're all, great partners, sharing materials and knowledge, and then network with all these other institutions. We're part, I'm just going to keep speaking and then we'll skip through the slides that I covered. And we're part of the Botanic Gardens Conservation International also, which is an international organization of about over 800 botanic institutions across the world. And they're, it's important for outreach on conservation. That's very goal. That's been a big assistance to us. We also are part of global efforts for major groups like oaks and ebonies, which includes the persimmons, and tree species that are they're the base species for fruit, the heritage species, the native species that are those plants that provide our fruit. We have is available internationally to these members of BGCI. So if people are looking for research material, we can connect. So we're today in our tour today, we'll be looking at a few of the rare species that we work with, and it'll be handy for you to take one of these brochures. Yeah. The species that we work with in Texas. And you'll notice some of these are sponsored species. That means that donors have donated to the endowment for particular species, and a number of local botanic gardens, some of the master gardeners, even master naturalist organizations have contributed to this. And what that endowment does is that it supplies us a small stipend each year to offset our costs for horticulture supplies for maintaining these species, or gas or travel costs to go collect the species. So this has been really helpful for us. Today on the front, you'll see that yellow daisy. That's one that you'll see in the garden growing. And we're back up.
Congratulations, everyone.
Yeah, wonderful. So I can forward it with. All right. So you can go ahead. There's the mission, which is pretty standard mission for a botanic garden, noting its service to the public, horticulture, and the scientific community. Here's the center. Those of you that will visit today will see these areas, the library, berry collection, seed labs, and yes, we are on Cypress Creek. And, our collections are on the second floor, so no issue with flooding. We have a backup generator to help with seed freezers. It's a standby generator. And then, I also had installed hurricane screens in the windows. It's been a good location. Next. Here's a view of what it looked like here during Botany. The buildings in the back. Mercer has much experience with flooding. Here is an example of some of our many volunteers that assisted us through the year with the herbarium projects and our art collections that we, back in about 2016 and 2017, we moved a large herbarium collection. Does anybody know what a herbarium is? Who doesn't? Okay, herbarium is basically like a library of dried Latin. Also be used for DNA extraction from the material. We've had people studying fungi that are associated with the specimens, not the ones that, destroy the specimens, but live there inside as, in a cooperative manner. And then, that collection came about 2,400 botanical illustrations, some of which are framed on that back wall, and you'll see the incredible detail. Those were commissioned by Robert Williams, who was the original director for the Museum of Natural Science downtown, and then he moved over to head up the Spring Branch Science Center. And that's where he founded the herbarium that we adopted. And I refer to it as SBSC, for Spring Branch Science Center. And then Mercer's collection is MERCA, MERCA. And those acronyms are used fully or part of a global network. I think over 3,000 herbaria now. And we interact, we provide to help secure research specimens for him to complete his research. So it's an interesting procedure to do that. So we've had specimens from Switzerland. We're working on one from Rome that's slowed down up here, and Canada and such. Then the specimens, the illustrations, one interesting point is that the artists were all local artists, about 15 of them. Most of them were high school, very gifted high school students, one of which was Felicia Bond, and you may recognize that name. She's like a world-known illustrator now for If You Give Them Out, the Cookie series of children's books. Some of you may remember those. They're very popular. So anyway, it was an interesting project to adopt that collection. And then within 3 years, we had over 45,000 of those specimens in the catalog because they had never been entered into a computer. So most of that was completed by master naturalists and other Mercer volunteers that were, basically there with us for 3 years working on that. So now we're doing the fine tuning on that, and that we're entering the detailed information about these plants, where they were collected. That's called georeference. It's sort of like scavenger hunt through Google Maps. It's a lot of fun. Some of you may be familiar with BRITS, that's the Botanical Research Institute of Texas program, the Armchair Botanist. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Well, that's an online way of volunteers. They just pull up a herbarium specimen online and they enter the data on their computer. Well, ours are now being transcribed. That means the information on the labels is being uploaded for 30,000 of the specimens, and those were just imaged this past July by an intern through the grant from the National Science Foundation to the Texas-Oklahoma Research Consortium of Bill. So we're moving along. Hopefully in a year or two, our 30,000 Texas-Oklahoma specimens will be online for everyone over globally to access. So why are we so interested in having a herbarium collection for botanical garden? Well, they're a reference. We even document our flora in our collections. You know, Mercer is more of a classical botanic garden. It's not like Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center that strictly displays native plants. We display plants. We have one of the strongest native plant gardens in the area. We offer classes for the Native Plant Society of Texas for the Native Landscaping Certification Program. And we're just getting ready to offer a new one, level 2. I believe it's on May 24th or so. So if you're interested, I have some information back there about that. Basically, it trains you on how to set up your own garden or set up a school garden and just know which native plants in the area are appropriate for you to use for your garden. So it's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
Don't you have to have taken level 1?
Yeah, and one must take level 1. And the Pines and Prairies chapter of NITSOT, Native Plant Society of Texas, they are currently offering the level 1 program at their chapter meeting for free. So, you know, you attend or online as well.
I think you have to go to at least there was a March class at
Yeah.
each one of their meetings. That if you go to their meetings, and there's 3, and then you do the plant walk here.
Yeah. So also in May, when we teach the new level 2, we'll be offering the tour. And so anyway, we're a good resource for that. And I think we can move to the next slide. So just keep them there for us. I mean, the purpose of having these collections is to make them available to the public. So a lot of citizen scientists and artists use these collections, and you know, basically come visit with us and do their research. Later, yes, ma'am.
So does this place participate somewhere in the parks and wildlife? I don't know, I've never rented, but they have these trunks of a project and you could pick up a trunk and then.
We have not done that yet, but that's you know, an excellent idea. We're also looking into getting grant money to help buy little variant presses, and if you're interested in what a variant press looks like, why do you need a press? Well, you have this, you know, bulky 3-dimensional plant, and you need to flatten it, right, and dry it. So we use that press setup, and you can take a look at that. You can make those on your own, make a banner, and it's a fun thing to do. I'm sure a few of you have probably put plants in old catalogs and books and books. Well, yeah. So anyway, this is, you know, a more organized way to do that. But, and I have a handout back here, if you're interested in that procedure, it's called the NBCs of making your own herbarium. Pick it up, we've got more out there for you to take. Featured in Texas Highways magazine. It's one that comes out what, 4 times a year or so, but we were in the spring issue the year before last, I believe, and it featured regional herbaria of Texas, and they chose us as one of the regional herbaria. Isn't that great? So we got a little PR. The lead specimen that was used for the article was a beautiful dogwood that one of our early directors had pressed. He was very much involved, John Poros, in setting up the herbarium. And you'll see one of the series of specimens in the back, for that in the back corner. Also have one of the books that Robert Vines, that director, wrote. And it's a pretty popular series. That one's on the trees. Take a look at that. So take to flip back one to St. Augustine County, San Augustine County. We're not St. Augustine. Up north up here to provide information for a landowner workshop. So we do things like that. Right now, next week I'll be picking it up, but I set up a display in the Kingwood Library about Mercer, Arboretum, Botanical Gardens, the herbarium, the conservation program. You'll see the three-dimensional art pieces around the room. That's made by a local artist, Paula Garone, and she used herbarium specimens to provide the detail for those works of art. And likewise, some of the colored illustrations in the back hanging. Well, there's one up right now because some of the others are on the road. Those were completed by a local artist called Lotus McElfish. I love her name. And she actually won the award from the Native Plant Society of Texas a couple of years ago for her drawings of endangered species. She spent a couple of days with us because we do display some of these native plant species. So she drew from the garden. She went out to a preserve with us and looked at the Texas prairie dawn and drew it, took pictures of it, and then worked in the herbarium. So again, just an interesting use for herbariums for artists. All right, now you can go along. More information. I've covered the International. All right. So, and then the fact we joined a program, Lady Bird Johnson Wildlife Center, and the Millennium Seed Bank project in Kew, which is a huge botanical garden in England. And they manage the Millennium Seed Bank there. And then also the US program, the seeds that SOS do. So we hosted 8 training classes in the early 2000s that trained about 80 volunteers on how to seed collect. So many of the local nonprofits like Audubon, the then Katy Prairie Conservancy, organizations like that, Houston Arboretum, their staff attended those for training, so it was a really good way to get everybody on board on, seed collecting techniques. Okay. I mentioned Center for Plant Conservation. You'll see some of those are the major botanic gardens for the most part that are part of that. So, all right, 81. We now have reached banking over 50% of these rare flora of the North America, of Mexico, Canada. Resources, conditions, and Fort Collins, and then we back up partners here. You'll see our ES garden, that's our short name for it, the Endangered Species and Native Plant Garden. I discussed about the Texas Landscape Certification classes. It's certified as the best of Texas backyard habitat. The flocks there shown in the image, specimens are displayed in that hallway display case. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll know all this information, but I'll go through it anyway. So, plants are the foundation for all other life. The basis for occurring crops and medicines, and represent reservoirs for future medicines, crops, and countless. So we use our wild crop relatives to develop resistance and new and rapidly evolving pests for tolerance to floods, drought, frost, and to increase the nutritional value. And so that's very important. As you know, we have an incredibly diverse state of nearly 6,000 native ferns, relatives or allies. You know what that means? That means the ferns and the club mosses, horsetail, and such. And so there are about 400 species of plants only found in Texas globally, and 20,000 about in the North America, north of Mexico, and approaching 400,000 vascular plant species globally. So 94% of those are flowering plants. They've been the most successful, so there's more of them. And we estimate there are about 2,000 new plants discovered every year globally. So it's a shame not to, to lose a plant if you don't know about what its resources are. There's one plant that is being investigated for cancer research is one of the ones that we maintain in our collection, and you'll see that plant today on the field.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Personally, I was just out at Big Bend. I don't know how many people have been out there. It's another world.
Yeah.
But they just discovered a new, I think it was sunflower species that was just identified in Big Bend within the last few months. Yeah.
See, I haven't even heard of that.
But if you ever get a chance to go out there, you didn't get to do much hiking, but it is a different planet.
Yeah, it's about a 10-hour. Yeah.
Endangered species, I know y'all are collecting seeds and you have a seed bank for it, but is there a place to get seeds from some of these plants so people can plant them?
Well, I know that sounds so tempting to do, but there are problems with growing them in garden situations because you can actually introduce pests to the plants. They will adapt to your garden. They won't be adaptable to the natural habitat. They're likely to get inbred. We're very careful about when we do a introduction of seeds to a site, we try to match the seed to the genetics of that site. And so we're very careful about when we collect seeds, we keep them separated by the mother plant. So, and the goal is to collect as many mother plant seeds as possible. So you have the widest spread of diversity of the genetics. So it's it sounds easy, but it's not. But you know, so you'll see some of our seed collecting rooms and our work sorting the seeds over the other side.
So what do you do with the seeds then? They're not for, like, that bag of seeds over there isn't for people to go put in their garden.
No, these are for rare endangered species that are restricted actually in, you know, distribution.
Those seeds are not endangered.
No, those are like absolutely common species. They're wonderful ones. The scarlet sage, tropical sage is one. Buttonbush is another. There is one non-native, which is the senna, but it's native south of here. It's pretty well behaved. I'm not worried about it. And the sulfur butterflies love it. So anyway, those are all just common seeds that we collect from the garden areas, from our common native and exotic plants. We don't distribute invasive species.
That's fair.
And then speaking of invasives, you attended a class on invasive species, and your instructor and I were speaking, and she didn't have a chance to hand out the quiet invasion booklets. And they're right back there next to the press, so everybody can take one of those home with you. Or you can go online and use the so, okay. So here we go. Diversity of our native plants basically supports the diversity of our animals. So we have this incredible diversity of butterflies and bird species in the U.S. Texas has some of the highest numbers of these species of butterflies. Okay, we're very lucky. People from all over the world. Yes.
I was bursting at the seams here. I have to share with you. A few minutes ago, you said, well, you guys already lost. You actually have very naive when it comes to most things that we're learning. And the other night I was on all over the holidays, and I had an aha moment. For granted the natural world around us. I'm saying how old I am. I want you to know that there are people like me sitting around that maybe you're just coming to this point where it's not only oxygen, but on plants, without the plants, and then you take a step without the soil. So there are people like me that just were sitting in a class like this, but I'm having these moments of going, gosh, I've taken things for granted. Some ideas. And now I'm putting it, I'm starting to put things together, and it's just kind of my brain is going. Right. So I want you, even though you might say, well, you guys know this. Well, I figured my mind.
State of our name. Why is it important to maintain the diversity of native plants for butterflies?
Oh, butterflies.
Yeah.
Is it your most specifically different?
A lot of butterflies, and I read also for every butterfly, we have these 4 moths. And why should we care about it? Because, I mean, pollinators and food, their caterpillars support our. So what is some crazy number of 6,000 or something caterpillars are needed to raise a clutch of chickadees? Is that right? Probably
6 to 9. Because 69,000.
Yeah, okay. So, and the garden, you know, we try to leave our native plants around where we have exotic, you know, non-native species displays, because we know if you just make it non-native plants, we'll lose the beautiful bird species. We're on the Texas Coastal Bird Big Trail also. Our sign was run over many years ago. And we couldn't get a new sign. But just the other day, I saw a male summer tanager in the endangered species. So if you lose, you know, your insects, you lose the species. So the more diverse your yard, East Texas. It's so primitive, it doesn't have its conducting cells. So, student, okay? So it's, like I said before, it's and just information. I have an beautiful thing, one of the of that, Houston, sorry, Texas, very darn, Hymenopsis that's and I have some information about Texas prairie dawn right in the back there where the here. Every spring we go out and we count each and every one of those Texas prairie dawn plants on our little preserve. They're very cool. Mostly. And when we count them, they're even small. So this year we had over 8,000, which is a good number, but small property is under 4 acres. And they depend on all deposits in the area or based on the hydrology. If you have a clay underlying the soil and you have repeated rainfall and evaporation, rainfall evaporation, it concentrates the salts on top of it. And these plants can survive in these salty areas, the Texas great dog and its rare associates. But they can't compete with the other plants that can't tolerate. If their seeds spread to the area where it's really grass, all they're the ones that have botanists, the field scientists that go in the field, and they monitor populations of native plants in Texas. When they see that there's a dwindling number of these plants, and this is, number, then those are, keeping. Every state in the United States has its own species of greatest conservation viewpoint. So, there's a lake, that one, yeah, that should work. I have to update it. And, they participate with other institutions like, Nature Conservancy or botanists from other facilities like Brett, Labor, Johnson Wildflower Center. Sometimes we are able to go out in Southeast Texas and visit this. So this list is updated, and you can go on to the next. And then it shows here how many of these species we work with in East Texas. So we're working with about 30 species right now, and 7 of which are federally endangered. Here it is, the beautiful little Texas prairie dawn, Hominoxus texana. It's a tiny member of the aster or sunflower family. And it's an annual, and it's a early spring annual. So it was first collected by Frederick Thoreau. That you can access his checklist, original checklist, which is really interesting, through the Native Plants Texas Houston Jack plant resource. That's very interesting. And then it was supposed to be extinct in 1900, and then rediscovered by a student from A&M in 1981 near just north of Cypress, and then listed endangered in 1986. Go ahead now. Now, what do these numbers mean? If you flip back to Prairie Dawn, it shows G2, S2 highlighted in yellow. So now you can see those numbers indicate how many numbers of populations, that means separate populations of those plants exist. So if you're a G1, there's less than 6 occurrences of populations globally. And then they have the corresponding state designation, S1. Then G2, S2 is 6 to 20 populations. And then G3 is 21 to 100 populations. So we work with G1 through G3. And then the ones that are more secure are those 100 or more occurrences, the G4s, G5s, and so on. And then there are other letters that indicate other aspects of the rarities. We can go on. Yeah. It's the largest populations are Katy area. There's Space Center Boulevard population. It's a 24 acres down in that part of town. The little Paragon that they manage. And then outside there, populations in Waller County, a dwindling population in Fort Bend, Trinity, Gregg County, and a new one in Madison. And then with Fish and Wildlife, we adopted or ran a naming because its original name is Texas Bitterweed. That's not real charismatic. But the name, you know how common names are? Maybe you don't know this, but hopefully this class will let you know that if you're trying to indicate or discuss a specific plant, it's best you know the scientific name. That scientific name is globally used. So, you know, if you're speaking to somebody in Japan and you type out Hymenopsis texana, they know exactly what plant you're talking about. Bitterweed also has other species in the genus that are actually toxic to cattle and sheep. So who would want to say something that's, you know, toxic to our nation? Hymenopsis texana is not. So that's one reason we have a renaming program. I live here, obviously, but that little plant was given the name of, any of you ever heard of Sesame Street? Well, there's a character in Sesame Street called Prairie Thorns. Anyway, one of the kids came up with it. All right. And so the project started when in 2003, environmental scientists discovered plants in this proposed development for West Greens Road. And then in 2005, we agreed to help with the long-term protection of the plant in that site. And they established a small preserve for us, you know, to maintain that species. So on that site also, we have other rare species, Houston camphor daisy and Texas windmill grass. And I think on the next slide, that shows you again where it is. The green pin is where Mercer Botanic Gardens is. I think if you click again, wait, there you go. That shows you where Willowbrook Ball is, that big oval here. And the preserve is right there in the red. Okay, you go on now. All right, there it is.
And
So
you
we
said
have,
it's closed for the public, tours only?
it is, otherwise, I hate to say it, but a lot of people do four-wheeler riding around there and would probably camp out on the property.
Yeah, so how did you discover it in a construction site? Do you have people going?
Yes, before a road is put in place or, you know, facilities in place, it's required that environment go out and survey rare species, you know, animals, plants, and also ornithological features. Yeah.
And then once it's discovered, then whatever they were planning to do there before is done, it's now preserved.
Not necessarily. They approached Mercer and said, well, is it worth preserving, you know, 4 acres? Or should we just, you know, do a mitigation and buy up more flood property from X Creek? And we said, no, we need to maintain this diversity, even though it's a small preserve. We have over 200 native plants species on that preserve, and you know, associated wildlife, butterflies, rabbits. We have bobcats that can live there and feed on the rabbits. We have hawks that nest there, so on and so on. Yeah, that close to them. Okay.
Is that why there's
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And they would have put more. It's too dangerous to, you know, have a road that encompasses more of the population. Anyway, those highlighted areas you can click again. We discovered yet another patch, and it's saying me, it was textbook. Jason Fingers that was there with me that discovered that extra little patch. So we managed that. Of course, I had to put in a large parking lot. Right, and I asked for permeable surface. No, we don't have the money. So it's, asking. But, there you go. We have to remove 40 trees from that area along the prairie that have basically encroached on the prairie. Tree hugger, and it was really difficult to go out there and get rid of them, but we did, okay?
You got rid of the towers.
Definitely. There's some hanging out on the fringes that we're having to work with our neighbors on, But here again is another illustration showing the rare associates, Houston camphor daisy, Texas windmill grass, prairie dawn, and the little cute Leatris rackeata, which is coastal Jacob. Houston camphor daisy is now listed as a G1S. So it's actually more rare than Texas prairie dawn. So you'll see some of it growing in the tour. And then ongoing projects, there's the grids. We're very lucky to have a wonderful internship program, typically restricted to the summers due to budgets. Years back before Harvey, Harris County would fund summer internship. Harvey basically wiped out all, extra money for that. So we survive on donations from very generous donors right now from the Old family and the Houston natives.
Just a quick commercial.
Yes,
The interns that work here, we have our August chapter meeting here. And the interns do their presentation
right.
to our Master Naturalist chapter. It's, the one last year was fascinating. It was, I think we had 3 interns last year.
Yeah, I think we're working on interviewing later in May and hopefully get 3 again. We've got some fabulous applicants. So, but yeah, Heartwood has been partnering with hosting this presentation for over 10 years. So it really helps give an audience for these young interns. Many of them are uncomfortable about, speaking to the public, but it gives them a chance to do that. And, Heartwood, you gain advanced training through it because we purposely choose topics, native plants or invasive species.
So put that on your calendar for, I think it's the first,
Wednesday in August.
which is a little different than the normal.
Yeah. So the site is not easy to maintain because a lot of water collects on it throughout the year because of that clay, underlying clay and here. So a few years ago, I've been saving a lot of conservation grant money, and I was able to buy this really cool wetland mower. So now we're not restricted. We can go out there. There can be water. We can go through it. It has these really wide tires, so it doesn't drag away. That's real. Here is a very busy graph just showing the many years that we've been monitoring. The yellow rectangles represent the plant numbers. The blue line, you can see Harvey, that's the peak for the rainfall. And then the blue bars represent the cold temperatures and the yellow extremes, and then moderate to mean temperatures. So we've been tracking this for many years. There's Uri on there too, yeah. So hopefully we'll get around to actually trying to correlate if, the numbers of they don't correlate with some, you know, but, you can't do it with a few years, you have to have some years data to be able to see that information. Okay. And then we also host other specialist, scientists out there that have the time and the money and the funding to actually do the nitty-gritty research there. So we have this wonderful group from Eastern Illinois and the Illinois Natural History Survey. This group has done a lot of work with endangered plants in Texas. And now, they've been working with us. They're coming back in a few weeks to continue their work. They work throughout Texas on Texas Prairie Dawn to study its biology, to determine, you know, get more information about pollinators, its breeding system, how it's dispersed and things. Oh, also the East Texas Bee Survey, which is a project ongoing funded by the comptroller grant, Texas comptrollers. They will come out again this year as well, and they're trying to survey all the bees in Texas. And then our all groups that are able to attend. And soon we'll be putting up our interpretive panels, because there's a sidewalk that goes along the preserve, and people wonder what the heck is, you know, the grassy area behind the tree fence. So this will help them understand what it is. There you go. Here's one more rare species we'll talk about. The Texas meadow root. It's another little species not found at the little preserve, but we're working the seed banking species as well. It's in the buttercup family. And go on. And three-flowered Barovia, another little member of the aster family. This one occurs at Katy Prairie area ranches, and also down at the Space Center and other sites. Not so, you know, they're different rare associates depending on where you are in the region. Thank you. And you need to go to the restroom and then go out and walk to the garden. And somebody will stay in the room from the facilitators.
Yes.
And that way you can leave your precious items in here. Take a little brochure with you, okay? And how about 5 minutes or so? Or do you need 10 minutes? Do you need 10 minutes? 10 minutes. Just for you.
Just a couple hours left here.
Yeah.
And for those folks online, there, it might be a little difficult once we get to actually dissecting plants, which you're gonna get to. But follow along if you can. For those of you here, we'll be working pairs.
Preferably by tape, if that would work. So, you know, 2 to 3 people,
Yeah, so.
because I have limited materials today.
We'll finish around 12:30.
So, and we'll pass out some newspaper for you to put down on these beautiful white tables, because of some of the plant sap and pollen will stain them. And anyway, so here we Mercer Arboretum and Botanic Gardens, and then for a few years, I don't know, 2010 or so, it was decided by administrators to change it to Mercer Botanic Gardens. Okay, well, this past, fall, the old name is readopted, which makes me very happy, because our arboretum is very important, and that's the section across the street. For those of you that are new to Mercer, we actually have about 5 miles of walking trails that you can go under the bridge there to safely cross to the other side and enjoy the walking trail. Over on the west side, we connect to the Cypress Street Greenway. So that gives you even more walking area and people bike riders.
You have multiple water sources here, or just Sanders Main, like along this good.
There's actually a really nice restroom facility on the west side. And I think there's a, water fountain close to one of the parking lots that's closer to all the field. So,
Okay.
but they'll be listed as, and I think there's even a dog watering. We allow dogs on the west side on leashes, but not on separate services. I want to emphasize, taxonomy helps us understand things that we are, trained in. The plant thing, one of those, and I'm sure it was mentioned that, before Carl Linnaeus, the Swedish physician, things were organized by, plants were organized by their vegetative characters, which are very dynamic, depending on what their growing conditions are. So he had the bright idea to use the reproductive features, which are more static and response. Okay, and then he also adopted the 2-word name for a plant called a binomial. And he grouped plants into families based on their reproductive. Well, that was great. And through the years, now we're into genetic technology, right? So even those plants that look familiar reproductively or say based on certain chemicals in their systems, they may be very different genetically. So there's a lot of changes in taxonomy of plants in the last decade due to our genetic technology. So one job of mine and Carrie, my coworker, is to keep all the signage updated with the correct taxonomy. Very, very interesting. So, all right. There's a great book back in the corner called A to Z, American Horticultural Society. If you ever come across, that in a, used book sale, it's a great one. Has a lot of great appendices about taxonomy. And likewise, the series produced by Britt, again, that's Botanical Research Institute of Texas, that the keys are quite friendly, and I think your trainer used this during your taxonomy lesson. And then the second one is, you can see these are my office copies. You see how well used they are. This is East Texas, but this is the first volume. This is just the conifers, gymnast, the ferns, and what are called the monocotyledons leaves. We read that, but that is definitely something on the list. Okay. Yeah. Now both of these volumes are available online, so you can actually upload and save into your computer. The second thing is this year, and that'll be for the, portion of the flowering, plants of the dicot group, dicotyledon. And, volume 3, 2030, but stay tuned. Okay. They've also produced this great guide to the ferns and the fern allies. Like I mentioned, 12 months of horsetail, but, and, lycophyte is another name, ally, okay? So those are your spore producing plants. And then not shown here is the plants of Trans-Pecos, Texas, and surrounding areas, which doesn't really apply. So anyhow, there you go. Some good resources for you. Common names are so varied and can, you know, two or more different plants, often in different families. So always when you're researching a plant, use the scientific name to research it. All right. So pronunciation, well, okay. I grew up in Huntsville, Alabama. My parents were German. So, okay. But there are a lot of guides out there for pronunciation online, or even in some of the, you know, horticulture magazines, not. And even those vary. So just do it. You know, it works. So don't be worried about it. Okay. All right. So a brief summary of the plant-like organism. All right. So algae, everyone knows, right? And the green stuff in the ponds and phytoplankton in the ocean. Okay. Well, the algae have some of them placed in the kingdom Protistus, along with the little cute things like amoebas and chlamydia. Now it's escaped my brain, but some eugleninas and things like that, and the plant kingdom. So algae, they produce upwards of 70% of the oxygen. So remember that. Oceans are very important for that reason. And then, of course, terrestrial flora produces the remaining 30%. So lichens, here, of course, like you said, algae and bacteria, and some of them are bacteria and then fungus. And then fungi, like I said, have chitin. Okay. Then we move up to the next group that produces spores. They don't have a specialized vascular system. What are the two names for the vascular cell in a plant? What conducts water? Xylem. Have you heard of that? It should be in your chapter. And phloem conducts the food through the plant. So the little moths go convenient for that reason. They don't have these specialized conducting steps. Okay, they reproduce by spores, no seed, and then they belong to, now they put them into their own groups, whether it's the moss, the living is very similar to moss, or hornworts. So back here, I have examples of the moss with its 1N generation, which is called the gametophyte generation, which is the most dominant form of the plant, the green. And then the sporophyte, which produces the spores, is the 2N spore plant generation. Okay, so look at that. And then, yes,
I'm sorry, maybe it's a question. Firms, they don't reproduce for the spores as well?
yes, and they're next. You can put it. Okay, so these are spore producing, but they have a vascular system. So they have a very well-developed system of conducting cells for phloem and xylem for water and food. They still reproduce with spores. They still require reproduction. Materials around. And in that group, we have the whisk fern, which is this is one called Stylotum nudum. This is a very ancient plant here. And it also just reproduces by spores. The gymnosperms, those are really naked seed plants. Gymno meaning naked, sperm is seed. They reproduce by seeds, okay, no longer by spores. They don't have any leafy, fruity tissue around the ovules, so they're considered, you know, they don't have flowers. The wind transfers the pollen from the male cone to the female cone. So what did we just get over this spring? Massive amounts of pine pollen, right? So the ginkgo tree here, right? We have these in the garden for you to look at. Cycad, you're probably familiar with the sago palm. Where is it? Okay, very spiny thing here. Sago palm is an example of a cycad. And we have a very nice collection of cycads in the garden. Take a look at those. Okay, now we can go on. And then finally, now we're getting up into the flowering plants, the angio. So also referred to as the Magnolia phyta. And they're classified typically into two major groups or classes, even though I have not brought in an example of some of the newer volumes that also separate out the early or basal angios. And magnolia trees are an example of that. They're very early, very primitive trees. They're actually pollinated by beetles. Very interesting. And then it's dipots are further divided into the true or eudipots. Okay, so you'll see that in some of the newer texts coming out. And then our second class is the monocots, so monocotyledons or lily oxida. Okay, so I'll talk about the monocots first. They typically display one seed leaf, not two. That's why it's a monocot. And their leaves typically have parallel veins in them, like this, the inland sea oaks, right? And the flower parts, if you know, microscopically look at them, these, the monocots are arranged in three. The bamboo is one of the, you know, your tallest grass in the world, right? It's a member of the grass family, and let's see, examples of a Cherokee sedge is another beautiful plant we walked by. I forgot to mention lilies. Okay, so lilies, plants to look at today, right? Then getting back to the dicots in the Magnoliopsida. Dicots, how many of you cook bean soup? or make bean soup or cook beans, okay? If you notice when you soak your beans, what happens? It separates into two halves. Those are the cotyledons, so it's dicot, and that's a very good example of that. And the flower parts, that means the petals, the colored parts, and the sepals, the green parts, are arranged in 2s, 4s, and 5s. And they have net-like venation in their leaves. So if you ever look at the Hygelia over here, using 2 examples, the for the dicots, okay, this would be the Quercus nigra, or water oak, right? So it's in the Magnoliopsida dicot. The order, you don't really need to pay attention to orders that much for what we're doing with Master Naturalists, but the family is important, the beech family, Pagaceae, and then your scientific name, Quercus is the genus name, nigra is the species name, and the common name in our area is water oak, okay? So on the other side is your monocot, and everybody knows the local sable minor, right? Okay, it's a good wetland indicator as well. There's lots of it on our property here. So it's an example of a monocot. The veins in the leaves you can see are parallel. It also blooms with arrangement of 3 in the flowers. It's in the family, the palm family, right? Ericaceae, and genus sable, species minor, and the common name is dwarf palmetto. It's also further described by the subspecies texensis. So in other words, the subspecies only found in Texas, and it has very unique features separate from the other flocks in my valley. Subspecies, varieties, often used for geographical races, and forms are typically used for like slight variations of individuals within a geographic region, like the flower or the fruit. So that could be a form. A lot of taxons just combine it all into one and use equivalent ranks. Others like to split things, so you see more of the variety in subspecies. Cultivar, if you see the word CD, letter CD or cultivar, that means that the plant has been produced through cultivation, all right? So it's man manipulated. Like,
If you see something like it just says Coreopsis SSP, is it just not telling you what?
yeah, it's just, they're just sticking to the, and I've done that on some of the displays here. SSP means species. And they're just telling you it's in the genus Coreopsis, but we're not quite sure what species. Okay. All right. And then anatomy of the flower. All this is in your reading. And the colored portion of your flower is to the petal. Right? The typically they're green structures below the petals. Those are called the sepals. However, in some cases, there's no difference in the color of the sepals and the petals, so they term them the sepals. Okay, so they all look the same. Okay. The whole collective term for all of that is the corolla. Okay? So the corolla is the colored parts of the, or the petals. Now, the collective term for the people is the calyx, okay? So often those are in green, it's easy to distinguish. The entire term perianth, that is the collective term for the petals and sepals. Then within that, the female portion. On the right side, you see the top is the stigma, which is the sticky landing pad that to which the pollen adheres. Okay, and then the style is just its stalk. The ovary is where the eggs are formed, and that's the female part of it. So then your male structures are on the left. The entire structure is termed the stamen, whereas on the female, the entire structure is called the pistil, right? And in the stamen, the very top part that contains the pollen are the anthers. And then that stalk is referred to as yet a different name. It's a filament. And the way those structures attach around the ovary is very important when you're trying to key out a plant. And that was mentioned to you in your previous class. So there it shows the sepal, the petal, the male stamen, the male pistil. And we can move on. All right, position of the ovary. And we'll practice that today. The ovary is superior here if it is above the attachment of the male and the petals and the sepals. This base here where all these structures attach is called the receptacle, okay? So petals, sepals, receptacle, ovary, stamens. Superior ovary, it's above the attachment, okay? Then in inferior, the ovary is simply located below the petals, sepals, and stamens, okay? The other term for an inferior ovary would be epigynous, okay? In other words, the flower is above, epi, like epidermis, gynous, the female. So the flower parts are above the ovary. And then for superior ovary, the flower would be considered hypo, below. The flower parts are located below the ovary. Got that?
The hibiscus will be a superior.
Yeah. This is superior ovary, hypogynous flower. Inferior ovary, epigynous flower.
The hibiscus flower will have a superior ovary.
Yes.
And the rose
Yes.
will be inferior.
The rose has a hip, and I believe in that case it's still considered superior. So we'll be looking at some of the others. Okay.
I have a question, and I did not do the reading, but I will. If it has a flower, then it is a female, because it has an ovary, right?
That's a very good question. Some plants will have the separate sexes on separate plants. So you'll have male flowers and you'll have female flowers.
Okay.
But what's the special thing about the female flower? It will produce fruit, right? Male flower won't.
I have some squash for throwing the seeds and it
Yeah.
never produced the fruits. And I found out it was
Yeah. Yeah. Likewise, things like holly trees, Yopon holly, you have the males that don't have berries and the females have the berries.
Got so one of them it has a flower, but it does not have.
It doesn't have both
Okay.
sexes. For dioecious is the terminology for that, and I'll have that word up coming soon. And that means separate houses, 2 houses die, each is a category. The mono would be one, that means it has both sexes women. Cool.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Oh yeah, here's a little bit about symmetry. The wine cups there, radial symmetry of the petals, right? The salvia flowers, like the ones we saw earlier, they have bilateral symmetry. So they're like us. You cut us in half, you know, the 2 sides on that side are more or less equal. Okay. And terminology for vegetative features, this is straight out of your book, guys. So terminal bud at the top, the leaves are located joined with the stem at the nose, right? Okay, and the space in between the attachment of the leaves is called the internode, right? Shows the flowers. The axil of the leaf is just that space between the leaf and the stem, okay? The leaf blade obviously is that, green part of the leaf. Lateral buds, very important. Those are the little buds that occur in the axil of the leaf. And those may produce stems or flowers, depending, okay? Let's see, then it shows the primary root. It's typically starts out as a taproot and oftentimes forms a diffuse system. So I've got some examples of different root types over there, different stem types. And, let's go. So, oh yeah, flip back to the other one. Look at the arrangement of the leaves on that. You have one leaf node, right? So that would be what arrangement? Alternate, right? Very good. Okay, now we can go. So the idea on the left shows a beautiful alternate arrangement of its leaves. And then the hypericum, St. John's wort, you see these 2 leaves are opposite here. So that's the opposite arrangement.
You have that here too, that St. John's wort?
Yeah, we did. I think there's some around the same. All right. Yes.
19?
Yes.
Okay, because I remember when we did the taxonomy class, he said if if the arrangement is opposite, if it's alternate, it's more likely to be mixed. Maybe I got that because I was.
Possibly, but I don't know. It's a pretty big genus and
No, he said the opposite.
yeah.
He's
Typically opposite
yeah.
in the United States
Yeah.
and North America. There's always a okay. Typically, yeah, this leaf one entire blade, right? Not divided. Whereas smooth sumac, we didn't see one of those. Think about there were some around the pond, I point them out. They have leaves that are divided like a feather with pinnate leaflets on the leaf. And you can tell it's a leaf by looking at the base of where the petiole, that's the stalk of the leaf, attaches to the stem. If it has a little axillary bud right there, that entire structure is one leaf. Okay. Now, some of plants like, say, for instance, your invasive Asian pivots, they have opposite leaves, but they look very feather-like in appearance. But they will have those little axillary buds in their axils, so you know they're opposite leaves. It's not the branches and the, okay? All right, and then red buckeye, That's a good example of one that has a palmate leaf arrangement, or even the shape of a palm here. It's arranged like the palm of your hand, okay, on the petioles. Okay. All right, and then on top of that, I think your book had more details into the, go back, please. Thank you. The margins of leaves, the hairs on the leaf, and the list goes on. Remember, I flipped over the false indigo and showed you the raised veins on the back of the leaf. Okay, all of those are very characteristic. You have to pay attention to those features. Okay, external, stem anatomy, that's how we identify things in the winter in our climate. Terminal blood will be at the tip. Lenticels are simply the little holes in the bark on the twig that allow the transfer of gases underneath between the bark and the outside. Then there again, you see the little axillary buds on that picture. And they're perched right above the leaf spar, right? So on that plant, based on the arrangement of the leaf spar, would it be alternate or opposite? Opposite, right. Okay, and then again, you see the internode, and beneath that bottom leaf scar are a series of wrinkles, and those are bud scale scars. And what those represent, it represents a growth ring. So the space between that terminal bud and that wrinkle represents 1 year's growth, or in the tropics, it may represent a good rain, whatever. Okay? All right. Okay, food types, and I've got lots of examples of these for you to look at. A simple fruit at the top is developed from the flower with one ovule. Okay? But it can be fleshy or it can be dry. So think of like a corn or a grain of rice. That would be a good example of a dry fruit, or a sunflower seed. Okay, that's an example of a fruit produced from one ovary that's dry. Now, fleshy fruits, there's a whole series of examples over there, berries, drupes, etc. Aggregate fruit have one flower, but it has many pistils. And each of those pistils develops into a little fruit, like on a raspberry or a blackberry. And in a compound, or sometimes called a multiple fruit, you have many flowers and many pistils, and they all basically fuse together like a pineapple. It's a good example. Okay?
Pomegranate. Is pomegranate?
Pomegranate? Pomegranate.
Because they have all the little things.
I'm gonna have to look that one up. It may be a special one for like a fig, and they call it a synconium, but I'll have to check to remember. All right, here's some examples of some of the common, native plants. Strawberry bush on the bottom left. It is produced from a dry capsule, and inside of it are the red, showy, what are called arrows in this case, but that is the fruit. And then on the top, wax myrtle. What is, typically say, oh, the berries on the white wax myrtle, but it's actually a specialized type of fruit. That the seeds have a very stony outer covering, so that classifies it as a drupe. And I have examples like peaches, mango, as an example. And then comb, like on the parsley hawthorn, You see that a lot in the rose family. A pome, an apple is an example, a pear is an example, and that's where the fleshy accessory tissue grows around the seeds, and the fleshy part is the apple. Okay. More dry fruit types, a lot of these are illustrated in your book. Different types of capsules on the top, legume on the bottom, nuts on the bottom right, okay? And then simple fleshy fruits, mango on the left. A pico is a special name for a fruit with a harder, more dense rind like a gourd or a watermelon, cantaloupe. A berry like a grape is shown on the far left. The pome I spoke about is like the apple with the accessory tissue. Hesperidium is a specialized type of berry found in what? What does that look? Orange, yeah, orange. So it has this leathery rind, and then it has these interesting juice vesicles in it, which is very unique to that family, okay? And accessory fruit, strawberry is a great example of that. They're just like in an apple, it grows out from the receptacle, but the seeds are embedded on the surface of it. And the surface, the seeds are, the fruits are called apenes, which again is developed from a single ovary and it has a hard coat. Synconium, that's a fig on the right. And let's see, we've got accessory, have we done that? Multiple fruits. Osage orange is an example, along with that pineapple in the back. Mulberry, very interesting. That's an example of a multiple fruit. Right now, mulberries are dropping quite a bit of fruit. Turtles here are really enjoying those. Our migratory birds are a big fan of mulberry. Hip, we spoke about that. You can see where the tissue has grown around it, but the ovary is still in a way superior, but it's one of those kind of iffy ones. But it's the hip has a fleshy part that you, okay? Specialized leaves, all right, bud scale, flower, which is modified leaves. If you look at some of the cactus in the hallway, the spines are specialized leaves. The onion in the back, specialized leaves on a very compressed stem, and then tendrils of some of your vining plants, okay? More specialized stems. Prickly pear, you know that cactus? Platyphyll. So the stem has become flattened and paddle-shaped. The leaves are the little spines. The stem is a photosynthetic. Not stolen like strawberries. Same kind of fingers, things like that. Form is like a gladiola, very dense, hard interior stem. Thorns, like the honey locusts I have over here, those are modified branches. Okay, all right. Like the ginger I have over there is a modified underground storage stem, likewise a potato. Okay. Fibrous roots, pretty self-explanatory. Fleshy like a sweet potato, right? Taproot carrot, easy. All right. Adventitious roots, the prop roots on corn. Some of you grow orchids, right? And those interesting roots that come out of the epiphytic orchids are adventitious roots. And again, on some of our vines, those are adventitious roots that attach the vine, okay? All right, now it's time to discuss. Let me get my tools out and. Okay. Right, okay, so that is a sort of a theme of 3, right? Again, an indicator of a moniker. The petals and sepals are in green, okay? So, what are you left with now? Yours is an emasculated, yeah. But you have your, stamens around here, and then the central part is what here? Should we put that picture back? Oh, well, I tell you what, it's on the slide. So if you could please move it. So the folks watching, paid attention to the veins and the fact that it's, by the way. Okay, all right, so there you go. This is a program I made up during COVID time. So again, petals, all the review there, variant, count the number of tepals. Is this a monocot or a dicot? Okay, we've done that. Flip, next one. Okay, and then separate out all the, next you'll separate off the stamen, okay? Pull those off and count them. And how many stamens do you have? So on the buds, remember, you've got anthers on those. All you have left on these in the flowers are filaments, right? Okay. So how many stamens, guys? 6. All right, very good. And then you're left with the female part. So what would be, well, we'll do that on the next slide. Flip over. All right, so what is the position of the ovary? Superior, right, because all the sepals, the tepals, the petals, and the stamens were attached below the ovary. Easy on this flower. Yeah. Giant. That's why we use it. Okay, so it's a superior. All right, very good. Okay, and we talked about the very top of the structure. The entire thing is called what? A pistil. Pistil, right. And then the stalk is the style, and the sticky part is the stigma. And this part that's kind of swollen here where the eggs are is the ovary. So then if you'd like, you can cut this way and make a cross section of it and take a look at what it looks like inside. You might be able to see some of the ovules if you use your magnifier.
Are you going to use like that, or just like that?
Next slide. All right, just a reminder, even the arrangement of flowers on a stalk or inflorescence is diagnostic. In sunflowers, they're in the family called the composite, the sunflower family, daisy family, composite, which means they are arranged in heads, which is very compact inflorescence. So if you get your little cheat sheet out, the single sheet that shows the what's it called? That's it, right here. Okay. So we'll work on sunflowers next. So be studying that while I clip these. And what you'll do, or actually it should be pretty easy. There you go. You can do that, and, if we don't have enough sunflower, okay? Let me put these off quickly. Look, this one is all fancy bagged up. So we're looking at one flower? Are we looking at one flower? No. This is an inflorescence. That means it's a very compact inflorescence. Right? And yes,
Gives off the aroma. The aroma.
the aroma. It depends on the plant. That was probably on the petals. The little, possibly the raised areas, it's different on different plants. I'll let you investigate it. Like you, I don't like the smell of lily that much. Does everybody have one of these? No. Yeah, using a blade is much easier. Some of us are too interested. All right, so you're looking at something that looks very much like this, right? Okay, so then how many flowers do we see here? Many, many, many flowers are located in there. The ones on the outside are called the ray flowers. And the ones in the center are called the disc flowers. So ray flowers have this long flappy petal on it. Okay. The disc flowers have a little united corolla. So if you counted the little tips on the disc flowers corolla, you'd see 5 typically. On this one, it doesn't have, but only the flaps. Okay, so these little guys would have what? Probably radial symmetry, right? The corolla on that, and the this one would be bilateral, right? And the ovary is located here. That's where it attaches. And think about your ripe sunflower plants with the seeds attached to the receptacle. So this is where that seed develops. Okay, the fertilized ovary.
The artichoke will be like that.
Pardon me?
The artichoke. Now that I.
Yes, the artichoke is a very good example of a sunflower family. And that one, you're eating the swollen parts of the bracts on the receptacle.
Is this the ray flower?
Yes, the colored yellow parts are the ray flowers, and you can separate those if you like. Pull one off and look at it with your hand lens. Oh yeah, they separate out nice. And then pull off some of the disc flowers, and you'll see that around this upper part, the stamens are fused like a tube around that, the stigma. The stigma has 2 little flaps on top, little colored flaps on top. Isn't that neat? So that's the female part. You see that on yours? Okay. So that's the receptacle.
Okay, so just that question.
Yeah, right. So now you have a different way of viewing a sunflower, right?
Easier.
You always thought it was like one flower, huh? Okay. So in this case, look at this picture again. You see, look at these little tiny filaments, and you probably can't see the that on these. Maybe you might see some little flaps around right above the ovary. Do you see some little flaps around that area instead of filament? Okay, those represent the sepals. Isn't that wild? So those are the sepals.
It's not a purple, red tip.
Now the purple red tip is the top of the female. That's the stigma.
Oh,
Yeah. So,
no, around the.
oh yeah.
Mind if a picture
You
taken?
have that. Some of you
Okay.
don't.
It should be.
All right, cool. All right. So would this then be a inferior or superior ovary? Inferior, right. And the fruit type in the aster family is like a sunflower seed, is something called a cypsela. Some people call it also an ape, but it's just the seed is surrounded by a coat, and it's hard, and that's basically the definition of that type of fruit type. Formed from a single ovary, so it's a simple fruit, but a dry fruit. Okay? All right. So how much time? Oh, we've got a little bit. Are y'all tired? Or can you do another plan? All right. I think we have enough of these. Just gave every bunch.
This is what they came for.
Yeah. The outer ray flowers are sterile and they don't produce seeds. Whereas in other plants, they will be now, the sunflower family is so diverse. There's some that only have ray flowers on the plant, and some that only have disc. On the little Hymenopsis texana texafuridon, it has a lot of disc flowers with very tiny little ray flowers around the edge. So in that case, the disc flowers are fertile. But that's a good question. I mean, every possibility is fine. But it's specific to the genus. All right. All right. So this one, I don't have the computer images of this, but you're looking at an alstroemeria. And this is a Peruvian lily. There's another name for it. A plant from South America. And look at one of the flowers first. Let's look at the leaf arrangement on the stem. Alternate, right. Look at the veins running in the stem. What would this indicate? Parallel, so it's a monocot, right? So I'm going to rip one of these off for myself so y'all can follow. Pardon me? Alternate, yeah, alternate, yeah. Oh, you got some that are alternate. Any possible combination? And remember, it's okay. So now, look at the flower at the face. Look at it. Is it a radial or bilateral in symmetry? Bilateral, right? Okay. You could sort of say these are tepals. They're all colored, but to me, it's fairly obvious that you got a difference in the three. So now you can peel off the tepals, the colored parts, peel off the corolla, okay? And
Counts as a bunch of them, tepals as the individual?
tepals is when you can't tell the green tepals from the colored ends.
I'm gonna do the reading.
And and the term for all of them is the calyx. So the part of the flower, the petals, they make up the corolla.
Color variation.
Yeah, the color variation is just depends on who's cultivating it, whatever person is developing this, cultivar.
Something else with these.
No, actually, it's kind of weird, and then it looks, we'll talk about that in a second. But how many of these, colorful flax people are? Six? Okay, great. And then what are you left with? Yeah, now you can pull off the stamens. They're pretty obvious. They have the little anthers on the ends, right? And how many do you have of those? Right? And then you're kind of left with this very boring looking stick in the center, right? But I think if you sometimes see, yes. If you look at the tip, you might see a little division in the tip. Nope, not in this one. Sometimes they'll, yeah, it's a little bit like two divided into
This
two.
one got a very tiny face.
Yeah. It's ideally it would have three, but it's not very well divided, but that is the stigma at the tip and the style, and then the ovary is below, right? But we have a dilemma here, don't we? It looks like part of the ovary, a little bit, is above the attachment. Above the attachment of the tepal and the stamen, right? But most of the ovary is below the attachment, right? So it's a little bit superior, but mostly inferior.
So in
So like
that
I
case,
said, anything goes in the plant world.
so in that case, would it just be whatever's?
Yeah, you'd say mostly inferior, yeah. And you can make a cross section of this as well. And in the lily, if you looked at the divisions in the lily, it would be a theme of 3, right? When you did the cross section, and the same in this. You can count the ridges, and you'll see it'll be like 6 ridges or 3 ridges, indicating monochrome. Yeah.
So that's fluorescent and inferior and inferior.
Mostly inferior, but a little bit inferior. Don't you love it? Yeah. I like to be wishy-washy. All right. All right. So, Alstroemeria, it's in its own family, the Alstroemeriaceae. Just remember it, the Alstroemeria family. So, the next plant, I think we have time to look at this and take a look at the leaves on the flowers we picked outside. Everybody has a little bunch to work with? Okay. So how are the leaves, the veins and the leaves arranged? I stole yours.
Oh, we have a few.
Yeah. All right. So are they all parallel, or is it? Yeah, it's not right. Okay.
What? This function is like protection for this.
Yeah. I was just asked, what's the purpose of all the extra green little structures? Those are termed as bracts, leaf bracts, and they serve to protect what they're surrounding. Okay. And those would be the little buds that are nestled around there. Okay. Right, and that comes off, to me, it looks like those are coming off of what? We're having a private discussion up here, so let me just tell you what we're talking about. I'm gonna break off one of my flowers and then remove the big bracts, the big green things, okay? All right, try not to tear it up like I'm And if you keep peeling back the extra large pieces, you'll eventually be left with just a ring of the hair-like green structures around it. Well, those are the tips of the sepals. So in this case, you have the green structure of the sepals on it, okay? And if you'd like, go ahead and carefully peel each one of those off and see how many you count.
Pulled out.
Well, there's more. You can try another one.
We sat.
Oh, yeah.
I pulled out those.
I know. What's happening to me too is I'm separating the corolla tube from everything else that's like breaking off, right? So that may be a reason why I gave you large flowers. Sorry. Okay, but look what's happening. I'm pulling this off.
Yeah.
And what am I pulling out? Left with the little stigma.
Yes, yes.
And the whole pistol is in my hand. And what's left is the corolla tube, right? And the stamens are attached to the corolla tube, right? So how many flaps are there on that corolla tube? They're fused petals. And the tube is a series of fused petals. So how many flaps? 5? Okay. And I'm looking at what I pulled off, the sepals, and I have 5. Did you have 5?
Yes.
Okay. So if y'all would all your flower parts into the center of your paper and then just wad it up, and it goes in that giant garbage can up there.